Hello and welcome to Lead the Recovery. I'm Mark Solvrinas from our Toronto home office, and thank you for joining us on this very special North American-wide webcast. As we continue to help families across North America, we've transitioned to doing business in new ways. During this program, you'll hear from Mike Lipkin, an accomplished author, speaker, and leadership coach, who will speak to performing your best during these times and beyond. Mike will then be joined by a panel of outstanding WFG leaders representing both the US and Canada, including SEVC Jamie Villalobos, EVC Steve Holbrook, SEVC Dan Charlier, and EMD Aldrin Destacamento. Together, they'll discuss how to best operate in a virtual environment, and we'll use the last part of today's program to address your questions live. Throughout today's program, please use the Q&A button found at the bottom of your screen to send us your questions. Canadian associates and agents will recall hearing from Mr. Lipkin at past Canadian events, but today we're very proud to have the opportunity to share his insights with our entire family across North America. So who exactly is Mike Lipkin, you ask? Well, here's our president of WFG Canada, Mr. Rick Williams, to tell you a little bit more. Rick?
Thanks very much, Mark, and I want to welcome everyone to this call. We're very, very excited about having Mike join us today. As you know, Mike has been around the WFG family for a long time, speaking at a number of our big events, like Sky's the Limit and the Power of One. And over and over and over again, he's shared nuggets about how to take your business from one level to the next level. And we've been able to experience that and that success with working with him. And I'm so excited about having you back again, Mike, and thank you for being with us. People that don't know Mike Lipkin, he's the president of one of the largest global research firms around the world that helps get information and data from individuals and collects that data and shares it with firms like ourselves so that we can build strategies to help grow our business. He looks at individual values, preferences of customers, and then he connects the dots. I call him the connect the dot person. On top of that, he's an incredible motivational speaker, and he, through his communication style and through his nuggets, he shares where to take your business to the next level. And I just want to say again, we're very, very proud to have you here today, and I'm very excited about the next hour to have with you. And then we have four incredible panelists. Dan Charlier, obviously from California, thank you for being with us. Someone who continues to grow his business to the next level from the military side of the world and join the WFG family and continues to grow his business all over North America. Jamie, thank you for joining us. Also Jamie from California, a stellar leader who continues to also leverage virtual platforms to help her grow her business. And again, growing all over the United States. I'm going to challenge her to grow her business in Canada. I'd love to see you spend some time up here sometime. It'd be fantastic. Steve Holbrook. Steve, a great friend, an incredible leader, someone that has been leveraging virtual platforms and social media ever since he got into the business and has demonstrated how this tool can really accelerate and grow your business to the next level. And again, we're very excited to have you with us as well. Aldrin, a bloodline of leaders in WFG with his mother, and now himself taking on the reins. Aldrin's an EMD, and I'm very excited to have him with us because he is the new generation of leadership in our organization. And I want to really get his insights of how he's leveraging virtual platforms to help grow his business. So I just want to welcome all the panelists, welcome Mike Lipkin. I'm very excited about the next hour. Everyone that's on this call, please get your pens and pads out. There's going to be lots and lots of information here, and an opportunity for you to ask some questions along the way. So I'll pass it over to you. Thank you.
So Rick, thank you so much. And to everyone who signed up for this seminar, congratulations. You've taken another step towards not just realizing your dream, but being the reason why the people around you realize theirs. So every aspect of our lives have been virtualized. Pre-COVID, I would be doing this in a room with 3,000 people, but now I'm doing it staring into this webcam. And actually, this is more than just a minor miracle that I can be in my home office here in Toronto talking to people across the continent. So as you know, the title of my session today is Lead the Recovery. This is the fourth month of COVID. If you're on this call, you've come through the survival phase, and now we're into the recovery phase. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be quick. This is the way it's going to be, at least for the next couple of years. We're going to recover, then there'll be another spike, then we'll recover, and then there'll be another spike. But one thing's for certain, the champions will rise above their circumstances. One of my favorite quotes of all time is from Ralph Waldo Emerson when he said, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us." And I know that if you're on this call, you are in the business of helping other people manage their fear and their anxiety and their doubt. So what we're going to be covering off in the next hour is, first of all, what does it mean to lead the recovery? I'm going to walk you through some key trends that are shaping the immediate future. Then I'm going to walk you through what I call your 3 superpowers that every one of us has, but not every one of us uses. And I'm going to share with you what they are and how you can use them to the benefit of everyone around you. And then we get to what I think is the most exciting part of the next hour, and that is a really robust dialogue with some champions that are really not just reporting the news, but who are making the news. So I'm going to now move to just share my screen. So just bear with me while I share this. Again, this is another miracle of technology. So this is where we are. We're into lead the recovery mode. And you'll see that I love these kind of almost superhero graphics, because all of us in our own way are everyday superheroes. So let's look at the first slide, which is a quote from the great Jeff Bezos. Now, as you know, Jeff Bezos is the founder and the chief executive of Amazon. And as you can see from this little photograph, this is actually from the latest issue of The Economist magazine. And they just talk about Amazon really being the one organization that is most calibrated to today's reality. And I hope that you can see there's a remarkable similarity between Jeff Bezos and Mike Lipkin, give or take about $200 billion. But Jeff Bezos's favorite quote is that it is always day one. So if you take nothing else from my talk, take this thought away, that no matter what yesterday represented, no matter what tomorrow represents, today is day one. And if you see every day as day one, then you're always learning, you're always growing, and you're embracing whatever comes at you with a champion mindset. So let's now talk about the purpose of today's session. I have created a word called the potentiator. You will not have seen that word before because I actually made it up. And this is a very important point because we're living in a world where we're all going where no one has ever been before. We all need to create new concepts and new ideas. We've all been exposed to new language like, social distancing. Even, COVID per se was not a word that was in anybody's dictionary at the end of 2019. So if you're a potentiator, you really do 3 things. Number 1, you bring people together so they can achieve more. There's a reason why we're doing this live, because there's an energy that comes when people come together. Number 2, you help people live the dream. And this is so important right now because many people are not living the dream, they are living the nightmare. However, I know that there are a lot of people on this call who are doing exceptionally well right now, and your job and my job is to help people make the most of the crisis. And then most importantly, a potentiator is someone that creates breakthroughs with others. And let me talk to you what I mean by the word breakthrough. So a breakthrough, and I want you to think about what a breakthrough means to you. A breakthrough is an action. You do something and it moves you through an obstacle. Or it's a sudden insight that enables someone to achieve a remarkable result. So, we've all been in a situation where somebody said something, or we learned something, or we saw something, and immediately things clicked in our mind, and all of a sudden we understood things that we didn't understand before. I hope we achieve that kind of breakthrough for you in this session. A breakthrough can also be a personal victory over doubt that liberates someone from their fear. I want to share something with you right now. I'm working with a lot of very senior, very successful, very affluent people. And what amazes me is how each and every one of them is carrying their own fear within them. You know, we all take preconditions with us into COVID. Some of those preconditions may be physical, some might be emotional, some might be mental. But I will tell you, of all the things that I focus on in my coaching, helping people get over their personal fears might be the most important one. So hopefully we help you do that today, and hopefully you do that for the people that you serve as a result of today's session. A breakthrough is also a decisive discovery that causes extraordinary success. So you discover something that enables you to do a range of other very important things. And most importantly, I want you to focus on this last sentence. A breakthrough is whatever people need most in that moment. So when you and I are engaging with a client or a prospect at the kitchen table or over the phone or in a video conference like we're doing now, you want to probe for what's the breakthrough that they're looking for. So for example, the breakthrough that I'm always looking for is, what's the next insight? What's the next technique? What's the next strategy that I can use to help other people become successful? And that's why I love being alive at this time, because on any given day, in any given moment, so much is happening, and I feel like I'm having one breakthrough after another. And frankly, being on this call with over 3,000 people for me is an amazing breakthrough. So again, thank you very much for that. So here's my question. Are you ready for what comes next? What do I mean? Well, I don't know exactly what's going to happen next. Nobody does. And I don't know specifically when it's going to happen. Nobody does. But there's certain things that we know for sure. And so at Environics, as Rick pointed out, at our research company, we've identified 10 things that we're all going to be living with at least for the next 1 to 2 to 3 to 5 years. Some of them are already expressing themselves. Some of them are about to express themselves. So number one, there are 3 emotions that we're all going to be living with: fear, anxiety, and doubt. People are scared of what's going to happen. We're going through unprecedented volatility. So remember this, our number one job is to radiate confidence and give other people confidence in the face of fear, anxiety, and doubt. Number 2, we're living in the age of social distancing. No matter what happens next, people are going to want to avoid contact. So we won't be able to shake hands or hug or do the double kiss as we do in Canada like we might have done before. And so non-verbally or non-physically, your language, your ability to connect with people has got to happen at a distance. So train yourself to communicate the way I'm communicating with you now. Number 3 is exactly what we're doing in this moment. Virtual communication is going to be the dominant channel of communication. And I will tell you that the vast majority of people are not great at virtual communication. You know, I'm into, just like you, the 4th month of lockdown, and it's taken me the first 3 months to really get comfortable staring into a webcam and pretending that I'm not just talking at the webcam, but I'm talking to you live in your home or in your office. So I've learned the power and some of the techniques of virtual communication, and we'll talk more about that during the course of my presentation. Number 4, there's going to be, and there is currently, global contraction. You know, throughout North America, we've gone from a 3 to 5% unemployment rate to a 13 to 15% unemployment rate. And this year, the overall gross national product, or GNP or GDP, could decline even further. So right now, the world is contracting. And a lot of people are contracting with the world. They are hunkering down. They are battening the hatches. They are waiting for the storm to pass. They are thinking small. They're playing defense, not offense. And so you and I have got an incredible opportunity ahead of us, and that is to think growth, to think expansion, to be the people that are reaching out when other people are withdrawing in. Number 5. Trust in tribes. This is a very important point. And what does it mean? It means that when we're faced with so much uncertainty and so much fear, we want to trust people who we already know, who've already proven themselves to us. So when Rick was looking for a resource to inspire you at this very important time, he looked back into the past and he remembered the contribution that I've made and decided to bring me in. So let me share this with you. We all want people who we know will take care of us in this very risky, very perilous, in these unprecedented times. So every interaction is important because it becomes a deposit on that trust. Number 6, innovation is happening at breakneck speed. That's why I call this breakneck breakthroughs. We have some of the smartest people in the world hunting for vaccines to COVID, but we're all hunting for our own vaccine. And as change accelerates, our ability to innovate and reinvent needs to accelerate. So I will share with you that, pre-COVID, I would create a new program maybe every 3 to 4 months. Now I'm creating a new program maybe every 2 to 3 weeks because that's how fast things are moving. So in the time of COVID and in a post-COVID reality, there will only be 2 kinds of people, the quick and the dead. And if you're not quick, you'll be dead. Number 7, the great give back. So when COVID hit, what we saw was a tremendous outpouring of desire of both companies and people to give back and take care of their communities. And we all know the brands and we know the people that really stepped up and they didn't worry about making a profit. They didn't worry about monetizing their efforts. All they wanted to do is ensure that they did the most they could to help people get through a difficult time. And so moving forward, we're becoming aware of some of the injustices in our system. So we've got the social issue, we've got the health issue, we've got the economic issue. My invitation to all of you is to do good by doing good. So make whatever profits you want to make, but make sure that you give back as much as you possibly can. My experience is that the best of you on this call are very active in your community. You know that philanthropy, giving back, is not optional, it's mandatory. To those whom much is given, much is expected. That saying has never been truer than it is now. The 8th trend is what we call healthy gratitude. Number 1, I don't know about you, but I'm just delighted that I am symptom-free. I have never been more aware of how fortunate I am to be healthy. So I think we all have a far greater sense of the gift of health than ever before. But number 2, we all have a greater sense of gratitude towards those frontline people that are enabling us to stay at home. Those frontline people who are putting themselves in harm's way so that our lives can continue. And so the moral of this trend is go looking for opportunities to appreciate people. Say thank you as often as you possibly can. Demonstrate your gratitude by doing whatever you can for the people who are helping you live the life that you are leading at this moment. Number 9 is my favorite trend of all. It's authentic humanity. We want to be around people, and yet because of social distancing and because of lockdown, we are prevented from being around people. And so when you are engaging with folks virtually, like I'm doing now, let them see you, let them feel you, let them be excited and motivated by you. And very importantly, if you make a mistake, it really doesn't matter. If you're not as perfect as you'd like to be, it really doesn't matter. Be willing to be vulnerable, being willing to be transparent. So as I'm talking to you now, I don't have a script in front of me. I've got my key slides, but I trust that whatever I say, it's going to be the right thing in the moment. And if it's not, well, then I'll just move on. So you want to share as much of yourself as you possibly can, because now more than ever, we need to be around people, even if physically we cannot be around people. And then finally, and maybe most importantly, is this 10th trend that we call personal precedent. So there's no playbook for what we're going through. Just like you, I'm talking to a lot of people all the time, and they keep telling me that they've seen a lot of things in their life. I know some people who've been through wars, but what we are going through now defies imagination. It is beyond anything that anyone has ever been through. So we're all pioneers, we're all trailblazers, we're all members of Star Trek, boldly going where no one else has ever been before. So look, those are the 10 trends. I'm sure some of them you're familiar with. Some of them you might have been sort of familiar with, and maybe now I've clarified them, but you want to make sure that you are on trend, ahead of trend, and helping other people deal with these trends. Okay, so let's talk about your 3 superpowers. Now, everyone on this call is an everyday superhero out there helping people deal with the dangers in their lives. And I want you to think of the superheroes that we all know. So think of Superman, think of Spider-Man, think of Batman. When are these superheroes called for? They called for when there's a crisis. They called for when there's a problem. You know, so Clark Kent only becomes Superman when the crisis requires Superman. That's when Peter Parker becomes Spider-Man, or Bruce Wayne becomes Batman. And they become the superheroes through their 3 superpowers. So the 3 superpowers are as follows: certainty, and I'll talk to you what that means; charisma, which is one of my favorite words; and then finally, conditioning. So let's look at each one of these superpowers in turn. So let's talk about certainty first, and there are 5 aspects of certainty. The first is, whatever you're going through right now, just know that you built for this. Everything is supposed to happen just the way it's happening. How do I know that? Because it's happening. There are no such things as accidents in the universe. So I know that I am meant to be talking to you today through the webcam, although I would obviously like to be talking to you face to face. Number 2, and maybe the most important thing I can say to you today, make fear your fuel. Your fear isn't going anywhere, and there's nothing wrong with you if you're experiencing fear. You know, another word for fear is respect. And so you have to be okay not being okay. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. So even as I'm talking to you right now, and hopefully I'm radiating certainty, I'm also, you know, there's a healthy amount of fear here that's keeping me sharp, because I've learned to make friends with this thing called fear, because it insulates me and vaccinates me against complacency. Number 3, learn, experiment, and grow. So, you know, amazing change is happening at breakneck speed. So we're learning all the time, but experiment means you taking knowledge and you trying to apply that knowledge. Now, Thomas Edison said, an experiment is not an experiment if you know how it's going to turn out. So by definition, when you're experimenting, sometimes you don't even know what the outcome is going to be, but you need to keep moving forward, because that's how breakthroughs are made, and that's how you grow. Number 4, and I know that all of you on this call live by your plan, but I like to keep things as simple as possible. So there are 3 aspects to a plan at this moment. Number 1, you got to have a goal or a prize that really inspires you. So for me, just prior to COVID, I was going to publish a book that I pressed pause on, because this is a whole new reality. So I want to publish this book by the end of the year, and I want to achieve $1 million worth of revenue by December 31, 2020. That's my goal for 2020. And the reason why is that if I publish the book, if I achieve that goal, I will have inspired and empowered thousands of people. And that is truly what juices me. And then action. There are 5 actions that I need to take on any given day. Number 1, I need to take care of my health. Number 2, I need to learn something. Number 3, I need to connect with people that are amazing. Number 4, I need to have an adventure. I need to do something I've never done before. And number 5, I need to remind myself that there is a higher power, because now more than ever, we need this thing called faith wherever we can find it. So those are my 5 actions. I know if I take those actions, I'm going to achieve my purpose, I'm going to achieve my goal. And then finally, it really is about becoming an essential service. So there's certain businesses, there's certain services branded by the government as an essential service, but you want to be an essential service to the people who are most important to you. So in my world, I've got my network, and I want them to see me as their essential service when it comes to motivation, knowledge, and keeping track of change. So that's certainty. And I just want to highlight that, you know, certainty is not going to come from out there. It's going to come from in here. And when people are around you, they must feel that sense of certainty. And that's why I've got this character in his super person pose. That individual is confident that he can handle whatever comes at him. So let's look at the second superpower. And this is my favorite word of all, charisma. Now, if you're of Greek descent, you know that the word charisma in Greek literally means the word gift. So if you look up charisma, you will see the word gift. And we all have a charisma. The word charisma means presence, means radiance, means energy, means magnetism to other people. And now more than ever, we need to radiate that charisma, because I'm talking to you through a webcam. And what a webcam does is it compresses your impact. Obviously, if you could see me and if we were in the same room, there would be a 360-degree view of me and I might have greater influence on you. So now I've got to overcompensate for the distance between you and me by really ramping up my charisma. And I know that if you're on this call, you are someone who believes in charisma because you are in the business of building communities, building networks, and building loyalty. And none of that happens without charisma. So number one, act your role. This is the fun part of what we do. So you may have a favorite actor. So in my case, my one favorite actor is Meryl Streep. My other favorite actor is a wonderful individual called Morgan Freeman. And when they play a role, they understand that they have to move from being either Meryl or Morgan, and they have to step into the role. Now, every one of us plays a role in other people's lives. So when you're in front of them, be authentic, but make sure you are acting your role. Number two, light yourself up. So hopefully you can see how really juiced and enthusiastic and stoked I am to be in front of you. But I'm also lighting myself up literally. So when you're online, make sure that there are bright lights all around you so that people can see you, feel you, and have you noticed if you can see someone clearly, it also is almost like you can hear them in a better way as well. Number three, if you want charisma, make a powerful promise. I'm not saying overpromise, but what I will say is you shouldn't underpromise either. You want to make a powerful promise that makes people want to be with you. You know, that's what makes brands great. They make a powerful promise and then they over-deliver against their promise. So my powerful promise is I create breakthroughs with others. That's a big promise. And then I do whatever it takes to make good on that promise. But that promise is something you want to make at the very beginning of the process, because if I make a promise like that, I have to maintain a certain standard. If I'm the individual that helps others achieve breakthroughs, I've got to think like that. I've got to act like that. I've got to deliver those results. I've got to hold myself accountable. Number four, listen like you mean it. So right now, I'm being paid by the word. But if you and I were having a conversation together, I would be listening very intently to you. And I want to give you 3 tips when it comes to listening to others. Number one, you want to lean into the conversation. So when you talk to someone, literally lean forward so they can see how engaged you are. Number two, when somebody says something, repeat back to them what it is that they've said so that they can really understand that you've heard and you've understood. And then number 3, when other people say something, what you want to say to them is exactly. In fact, practice this wherever you are. Just say exactly. So when you talk to someone and they say something and you're in agreement with them, just say exactly. We want to be reaffirmed. So lean in, repeat what others have said, and then reinforce what they have said by saying exactly. All right. And then finally, there's no substitute for practice. Practice, practice. But I want to give you a very interesting spin on the word practice. I'm not just talking about mindless practice here. I'm talking about the kind of practice where you're sharpening the saw with every conversation. You're getting better and better every time you're in a room with someone, or every time you're in a conference with someone, or every time you try something new. So you want to be like any great sports person or any great professional. Every situation has got to be an opportunity to be good in that situation, but then take yourself to a whole new level. All right, so let's look at the final superpower. And this is the one that enables you to sustain a very high level of engagement. You know, someone once said to me, in the game of life, it's not about who's right. It's about who's left. Who can stay the pace? Who's still standing at the edge of the race? If you want to finish first, you must first finish. So let me give you 5 insights as it relates to conditioning. And the first is, you want to compete like an Olympian. Now, what do I mean? Well, at the 2018 South Korea Olympics, there were 2,493 athletes competing for 221 gold medals. So think about that. 2,493 athletes competing for 221 gold medals. That means there was a 90% chance that if you were an athlete, you were not going to win the gold. In fact, there was a 70 to 80% chance you wouldn't win any medal. So what's the moral of the story? You've got to be willing to go through those setbacks. You've got to be willing to go through those rejections. You've got to be willing to go through those failures by being disappointed, not destroyed. You know, the only pitch that matters is the next one. So I want you to practice this saying the next time you have a disappointment. I just want you to say, that's inconvenient. That's mildly disappointing. Because then you're saying to your brain that it's not a big deal. You'll get through that. You'll move on to the next one. Whereas if you say, I'm devastated, or I'm shattered, or I feel betrayed, then you're going to be destroyed, not just disappointed. And by the way, we all know the more you try, the more you fail, the more you succeed. Winners will always lose more than losers because they're trying more things. Number 2, focus on what fires you up. You know, I practice this multiple times an hour. At any given moment, we can choose what we focus on. And if you focus on what brings you down, you'll go down. But at any moment, we can also focus on what fires us up. So prior to this session, I was really focusing on the privilege and the pleasure and the joy and the adventure and the contribution that I could make in the session. And that got me to this point. Now I'm going to focus on my next exciting episode, and I will get through anything that comes at me over the next few days. Number 3, discipline your distraction. Look, your biggest competitor is not your biggest competitor. Your biggest competitor is distraction. It's noise. It's static. It's getting sucked into Facebook or Instagram or wanting to watch Netflix when you should be working on yourself and sharpening your saw. So give yourself an hour a day, even 90 minutes a day to be distracted, and then step back the rest of the day and really discipline yourself on doing what really matters. Look, I don't know about you, but the best feeling that I can have at the end of any given day is to look back at the day and say, I did all I could do. So let me share with you, the most you can do is the most you can do. And so if I can look back at today and say to myself, I did the most I could, then I'm good with whatever happened. But if I look back and I feel regret, if I procrastinated, if I didn't do what I knew I had to do, that's when I start to get upset with myself. Number 4, we become the company we keep. So network with great people. Hang with those people who pull you forward. Mix with those people who continually provoking you to the next level. If you were to ask me what the number 1 quality is of those people who achieve and sustain success, I'll give it to you in a single word: context. They put themselves in a context that is continually stretching them, just like hopefully we're doing with you on this call. And then finally, celebrate the struggle. No matter how good you get, it isn't going to get easier, but you will become better. You will develop your mental muscle. And if it's a struggle, if it's hard, it means you're alive. It means you're in the game. And I'm talking to so many people now who are opting out of the game. Well, let me share with you, once you get out the game, it's really hard to get back in. So you're in the game, you're winning the game, which is why you're on this call. So celebrate the struggle. The harder it is, the greater your development, the greater your reward. And have you noticed, every time you go through a struggle, you feel like you're bigger, stronger, faster, and smarter. That's the beauty of the struggle. Never let a good crisis go to waste. Okay, so look, I want to just go through the final 2 slides. And I thought this is an appropriate slide for me to almost close on. So in 2002, I had the great pleasure of meeting Nelson Mandela. And, based on everything we've seen over the last few weeks in the US and in Canada, this message has never been more important. So I had the great pleasure of meeting Nelson Mandela. I'm originally from South Africa. I did some work with his organization, and my payment was I got to meet Nelson Mandela. And I asked him a single word. I said, Mr. Mandela, what was it like suffering for all those years in prison? Because as you may know, Nelson Mandela was incarcerated for 27 years because he simply believed in the ideals of democracy. And Nelson Mandela looked at me and he said, Michael, I didn't suffer. He said, I prepared to live my life every day. So when I was released, I would transform my nation into the kind of nation I dreamt of it becoming. And I've never forgotten that. He said, I prepared to live my life every day. So when I was released, I would transform my nation into the kind of nation I dreamt of it becoming. So he didn't know whether he would ever be released. Here he was, life imprisonment. And yet every day he was Nelson Mandela. Every day he was focused on how he could help the people around him and how he could prepare to lead his country into being a democracy. So you might be asking yourself, what does WWMD mean? It simply means, what would Mandela do? So Mandela, for me, is the ultimate superhero, and inside every one of us, there is a superhero. So before we get into the panel, I want to close with a final call to action to everyone on this call. Do it right by doing it right now. Just do one thing today that maybe you would otherwise have procrastinated on. Try one new thing, make one new call, do something that scares you, do something you haven't done before, because the way to get ready to do something is to do it before you're ready. Okay, so look, I've shared a lot with you over the last 35 minutes or so. I've shared with you what it means to lead the recovery. We've gone through 10 trends, we've explored the 3 superpowers, and now it gives me great pleasure to engage in the panel of champions. And so, as you heard from Rick, we've got Jamie, we've got Aldrin, we've got Dan, and we've got Steve. So welcome to the panel of champions. It's truly an absolute pleasure for me to be talking to you now. And Jamie, let me begin with you.
Okay.
How do you create your own certainty in the face of all this uncertainty that is coming at us?
I look at it as, we're leaders, and there's so many people that are hurting right now. There's so many people that are so full of doubt and just that uncertainty. Like when this first happened, our business is very much based on big group presentations, putting a room full of people together. And they said, we have to cancel those types of things. And, you're just like, no, we can't do that. How are we going to do that? How are we going to still, run our business? But then you have to think, there's all these people that are depending on you. So, when these types of crises happen, and it's going to happen again. I was around in 2008. I was around in 9/11, and our business boomed because leaders that maybe were comfortable, they have big incomes and overrides. It's like we awoken the giants. Boom. Now leaders are leading. They're at their best. They're, communicating. And so that's what I did. I was just like constant communication, encouragement, trying to lift people up and trying to say, here's what's next. And because we're, completely in their face saying, here's where we're going, and then looking for these opportunities that are happening in all these crises, there's definitely opportunities. I was on Zoom calls with, 500 nurses, and the husband's at home, and the nurses, she sees her friend breaking down, in the operating, it's just crazy, but they were wondering, do I have enough in life insurance coverage? Do I have enough? Do I have a will in place, a trust in place? And so people are looking for leadership. And so in times like this, we need to not be quiet at all. And so when you're leading and when you're pulling other people along, you may not 100% be certain, but you're going to have to show you're certain. You're going to have to show that you're, not doubtful, that you're not hurting, that you are excited. So for me, I just look at all of, like you said before, I love that quote that, don't let a good crisis go to waste. In every adversity, there's always an equal benefit. There's always, growth from it. So this is a huge adversity. Look at the great, growth and opportunity that's going to come from it if we stay positive and if we stay focused.
Wow. So look, Jamie, you could do what I do, and in fact, you do. You are a motivational speaker. There's one other thing that I wanted to ask you, and it came up when we had the briefing a couple days ago. Jamie, just talk to this group about how much you love to learn and how important curiosity, experimenting, and growth is, and how you actually do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always hungry. I love when we had that conversation the other day, and you said, act hungry or go hungry. And so I think sometimes people get very comfortable. They're big timing it. I've already learned all of that. I'm already at the top of my game. And that's when you stop growing, in my opinion. And I think if you're either growing or you're dying. And so you have to stay humble. And you have to stay a student of your business and of your personal growth. And there's always another level. There's always more growth to do. So during this time, yes, I was leading and I was doing all of these constant Zooms and all these also one-on-one calls, man, just holding people's hand through all of this stuff. But I was also reaching out to other mentors and other leaders and saying, okay, what's next? What's next? What's the new technique? What's the new strategy? Calling Zoom and saying, do a personal tutorial with me. Like, what are all the features? What are, other ways that we can get better during this time? And so, there's a lot of opportunity right now for growth, but there always is. We should always be, hungry to get better, to change, and to be a better person to impact the lives of others.
So good. And just for all of you on this call, when we did the briefing, really the briefing was about me talking to the group, but Jamie just kept on asking one question after another. And she went way beyond just today. She wanted to know about motivation. She wanted to know about how to use a virtual camera. And so Jamie, truly, you are someone I think who's got the ability to zoom all the way in, get the job done, get into the details, and then zoom back, see the big picture, and help other people do the same. So, Jamie, thank you for that
Awesome,
contribution. Steve, now I met Steve Holbrook again at the briefing just a couple days ago. Steve, I love your story. So just Steve, share with us how you handle uncertainty, how you create your own certainty, and that significant challenge that you've been through and how that has made you stronger and more able to handle uncertainty. Steve, you might be mute.
Oh, hey, Mike. Appreciate being on the call. Thanks for the opportunity. So I love that question. When I started in this business, Mike, I was 23 years old. I was making $11 an hour as a baker. I had no idea about money and finances. So uncertainty was all around me. And if I didn't feel uncertain, people reminded me that I wasn't going to make any money here. This was unstable. Do I really want to start a business? So I knew what uncertainty felt like. So I do what I tend to do is I go to the eye of the storm. I ran right to the middle of the storm, right to the middle of it. And I got to credit John Maxwell. I read a John Maxwell book. It talked about how you can create your own identity, create your own momentum. And it was in that moment that I knew I could create my own certainty. And what I did was, yes, I had to rely on my habits and my routines, but it was more than that, Mike. It was about raising my standard, because I knew that my habits and my behaviors were going to be a result of the standard that I set in my life. And the more uncertain the times were, the higher I set the standard, right? COVID happened. I'm like, Jamie, everybody got a golf membership. Everybody else was CNN 24/7. I dug a hole 20 feet deep and I didn't come out for 11 weeks, right? Because the more crazy it is, the more focused I get, because I understand the moment. And thank God I did, because in 2009, Mike, when I was lying in my hospital bed after being in there for in and out a year, lost 8 feet of bowel, had lost 75 pounds. There were some pretty scary moments. I knew it at rock bottom that I had done it before, and I knew that I could do it again. I ran to the center of the storm. I took a quiet moment and I re-identified what I needed to do. And I back engineered it. I set a huge standard for my life. And 10 years later, it looks a lot different.
Well, Steve, I've got goosebumps, man, because I hope you can all hear how clear Steve is on his purpose. His purpose is to take whatever's going on around him and take himself to another level to the benefit of the people that he serves. And I hope that what you heard is that Steve runs towards the issue. I love the fact that when other people were opting out, you were just doubling down. And so, Steve, let me let me go to the next question, because clearly you've got charisma in spades. You've got a tremendous presence on camera. Just share with us how you are building your brand now, how you are becoming the kind of person that is attracting the best colleagues and the best clients.
Appreciate that question, Mike. And you know, I'll just be honest with everybody on this call. It was about 4 or 5 years ago where I looked in the mirror and I asked myself, like, who is Steve Holbrook? Like, who am I? How would I be described in a room? I know who I think I am, right? I think I'm pretty good. I got some great things to say about me, right? But how am I really showing up? And what I did is I sat down, and again, going back to the creating, I created the identity on paper of the man that I wanted to be. I defined myself as a husband, as a Christian, right? As a business leader. And then what I did is I looked at that as a product, like I was looking at a can of Pepsi. And then I said to myself, I said, how am I going to market myself, right? Who's my target market? What's my message? What's my primary beliefs? What's my primary values? And I created the identity of the person that I wanted, right, on paper. And then I threw everything at that to become that person. And then, of course, I wrapped it around with associations of people that have qualities of where I want to be in my life. And then you compound that with social media, right? 2.5 years ago, I had a lot of people tell me that, Steve, you're setting a bad example to the company by getting on social media. Nobody cares what color your Slurpees are. Instagram's so stupid. It's just going to be a fad. Look at me. I got to 500 grand a year without doing it. And thank God I not necessarily in WFG, but outside of WFG. And I knew that, again, everybody was running away from it. I ran directly to it. I had a high level of self-awareness, and I decided that the part of my identity was going to be able to leverage social media to get my message to the masses. And I'm so glad I did.
Wow. So look, I hope that you can all hear that Steve learned from the masters around him, the men and women around him who were great at what they did, but then he also listened to his own intuition. He saw where the trend line was moving. He defied the haters or the naysayers or the people who were short-sighted. And now he's reaping the benefit of the risks, but also the effort that he took some time ago. Now, I got to tell you, Steve, that one of my favorite movies, as it might be yours, because you look like the kind of guy who would enjoy it, called The Gladiator. Remember the movie Gladiator? And in the movie, Russell Crowe plays the part of this gladiator, and his favorite quote is, "What we do today echoes through eternity." So what we do literally today will determine what happens next. So Steve, a really inspirational story. Thank you very much. So let me go to you now, Dan. Dan, you've got a 1,000 megawatt smile. You seem to be, probably 99% charisma, 1% human. So share with us, Dan, how do you build charisma? How are you building your brand and your presence out there in the marketplace?
Hey, Mike. First, can you hear me, Mike?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Yeah. First of all, I'm excited to be on this panel with you, and I was just listening to your message, and your message was such a great message to our team. And I think for me personally, I think one of the things as leaders is that you cannot give what you don't have. So one of the things that for me personally, I had to make an assessment of myself and how I was going to process the information, and also being able to pivot and sometimes change. Sometimes anytime that there's any time of change, it freaks people out. So I think for me and most of our leaders, one of the things we had to do is realize that as a leader, you're carrying the emotional burden of the organization, which is a huge load for leaders, right? And so you have to know that personally, that the weight you're going to be carrying these last 90 days with people that have a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace, and we're in a recruiting and building, developing. And as you listen to Steve Holbrook, and as he's telling his story about all the fear and how he had to run through it, the people that we're leading, they're going through all of these other fears, and then you add this on it. So I think for our organization, one thing we had to realize is that fear sharpens listening. So at times like this, when people would not listen, they listen more carefully, whether it's from the recruiting platform, whether it's educating families from what it is that we do. So we had to create structure really quick. So we had to give people confidence to structure through the platforms, through the virtual platforms. So our area-wide full-timers meetings, we created a schedule where people can plug in. Our business presentation meetings, we huddled all the leaders together, and we provided that. And then also one of the things that we learned during the last 90 days, that the speed of our business has gone so much faster. It's almost like the universe. It's a change that we needed to do, but once again, it's changed. So our business is based on a brick and mortar. And for years, we've been talking about, how do we create a hybrid model between brick and mortar and the virtual side? And a lot of the leaders, including myself, we kind of fought that change because we're so accustomed to doing meetings and face-to-face and at homes. And I think when this happened, we pivoted. And then now that we're in a virtual, we're like, oh my God, why did we take so long to make this shift? So I think for me, I think this happens for us, not to us. So I think that your ability to continue personally improve, to be optimistic in a pessimistic world. And I think as leaders, if we take on the role that, hey, we change states, which means that, one of the superpowers that I like is that I'm a state inducer. That means that when you come in contact with me, whether it's virtual or one-on-one, if you're in a negative state, by the time you leave me, you're going to be fired up, because that's the energy and that's the fire that I'm bringing. So I think all of our leaders in WFG, that's one of the things that we're consistently communicating, and things like this, where we could get 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people and give an incredible message like this, and we're adding values to people's lives. So that's kind of my take on it.
Wow. Dan, that is a masterclass in adaptation, and there were a number of themes, but there were three very important points that I took away. Number one, and this is a keeper for me, Dan, so you've given me a gift today, and that is fear sharpens your listening. It sharpens your listening if you're the coach, and it sharpens your listening if you're the student or the player. Number two, I love what you said, that we're in a hybrid world, and initially you resisted the change, and then when you threw yourself all in, you then discovered how powerful this could be, and you look back and you said, why did I resist it in the first place? So I want everyone who's on this call to understand that no matter who you are, there are going to be those moments where you might read things wrong, or change might appear to be too much for you, but you got to stay the course. You got to throw yourself all in, and then the right things will happen. But then the third thing you said, Dan, that just gave me goosebumps, man, was that you're a state inducer. And actually, that's the ultimate superpower. And I think that if you bring confidence, if you bring charisma, if you condition yourself, and you can get people to change their state from pessimistic to optimistic, or from down to up, that's the ultimate gift. And I think people will do anything to be around you if you can do that for them. So Dan, let me ask you one final question, and that is, as you think about this strain or this burden that you're carrying as a leader, and all the effort that this is taking, how are you conditioning yourself? How are you preparing or training or orienting yourself to a future that you know is going to take all you have and then some?
Great question, Mike. First of all, I appreciate the question, and second of all, I appreciate the feedback. But I think for me personally, it's really understanding your personal recipe. So we've all had days where we felt like everything we touched turned to gold. And we've all had days where we felt like we could not get out of the bed because we felt like there was a truck on top of us. And I think when you take time out to really be conscious and realize, ask yourself, You know, why am I feeling this way? So if I'm not feeling really good, why am I not feeling this way? We take inventory. What am I reading? What am I listening to? Who are the people that I'm allowing to influence me, right? So for me personally, if I'm watching things, I watch my energy. If I'm watching things that are very low energy, and I have people around me that are very low energy, and I'm not reading, I'm not improving, I'm not working out, then I feel a certain way. So I don't have to really go into it. I go, wait a minute, this is my recipe. When I feel really bad, these are the things I'm usually doing. So, but what do I do when I feel great? So for me personally, before I get out of bed, the first thing that happens is that my prayers and my meditation. I got to get my head right first, right? I got to be thinking about all the things that I'm grateful for. And I take myself through that process, and that's a 10 to 15-minute process. Then second, I got to move my body. The person, you know, a body in motion stays in motion. So I got to move my body. I know if I go out there, I get a sweat. For me personally, I like to swim in a cold pool because it changes my state. I don't heat up my pool. I like diving in a cold pool. And right after that, I can accept any challenges the day has. And I also believe that something wonderful is about to happen at any given time. So I think for me personally, once I can manage myself, then I'm open to the world.
Wow. So look, Dan, a master class in how to sustain your conditioning and how to understand your recipe for when you do good and to be aware of when you're not doing good. And I'll just give you one little story here. And that is the biggest challenge facing all of us as we engage in virtual communication is something called internet strength or bandwidth, or, you know, how fast is your download and your upload. So I have an application on my laptop that I keep watching because it tells me how fast my download speed is. And if the speed is low, then I'm going to reboot and reconnect and do whatever I can to increase the speed or to increase the power. And the same thing applies to us. So thank you for that, Dan. It's about self-awareness, discipline, and really willingness to act in equal measure. So that's fantastic. So look, the fourth and youngest member of our panel, here's an individual who's achieved so much in his young life. But Aldrin, thank you very much for joining us. And Aldrin, I'd like to ask you, because just based on our conversation 2 days ago, you come across as someone who's really charismatic and who's still at the very early stage of his evolution and his career. So Aldrin, just share with us how you generate that sense of charisma and what it's like to be a younger person or a younger professional in this world.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. I hope you can hear me okay.
Perfect.
But yeah, just to make sure I understand the question correctly was like, how do we create charisma? You know, one thing I've come to learn is I used to have this fallacy or this misunderstanding what charisma actually meant. I used to think charisma was about getting people to like you until I came to the understanding that charisma is not about getting people to like you, but getting the people to like themselves while they're around you. So when I thought about that in that perspective, I thought about in the consumer's end, as well as the people that we leave on an everyday regular basis. So when we speak to consumers as a young professional, we dig deep, we unearth and we excavate their buried dreams and goals. And then the best part is we just sell it right back to them. And as they fall in love with their own dreams, they begin to like themselves. And then when we think about teams and our associates that we lead, we remind them of the gifts that make them special. And the more accurate that gift is, the more special they feel and the more they begin to like themselves. And the more we we understand that charisma is that way, which is getting people to like themselves while they're around you, the natural consequence of that is just an incredible brand presence, incredible brand awareness. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, listen,
Nice.
every member of this extraordinary panel has delivered gold here this afternoon. But Aldrin, for me, you've just given me that breakthrough. And remember what I said, a breakthrough is a sudden insight that leads to remarkable success. And Aldrin, when you said charisma is not getting people to like you, it's to like themselves when they're around you. That is fantastic. And if you can do that, then anything else is possible. Let me ask you a question, Aldrin. So behind you, I see that screen, and your screen says Aldrin's Life Adventures. What does that mean?
That's actually my Instagram handle, actually. And I love that Steve already brought it up. Here's the thing. We can either face the music or we can continue to ignore it. The world is moving to a social media platform. I love what Dan Charlier mentioned earlier, which is how come we haven't moved to a Zoom or a virtual platform before? I actually know the answer to that because it required a pandemic of this scale for all of us as a company to make a pivot. And you know, the amazing part about that is we're never going to go back to the way we do business again, not because we're going to completely change who we are, but constantly enhance what we do. A question that's been asked to me a long time frequently is, Aldrin, now that we're moving to phase 2 or phase 3, now that we're in business, people are slowly allowed to be meeting in groups. Are we completely going to eliminate the in-person meetings, or are we going to move all the way in a Zoom platform? And my answer is very simple, actually, which is one of my favorite live shows to go see I would love to go see is the Ellen DeGeneres show. So my question is this: would you rather see a live studio production in person, or would you rather see it on a screen? You can't get married on Zoom. You got to do it in person. So when I think about just something like this, it's just that message that we can actually be able to move to the masses in a bigger way.
Perfect, perfect. So look, I want to go back through all the panel, beginning with you, Aldrin, and I want to ask you each, really, in just 30 seconds, to share, one big message that you would like everyone in this call to be leaving with. So if they didn't take anything else away, but one thing, and it doesn't have to be the thing, it's just the first thing that comes to your mind, what would your call to action to all the people on this call be? So Aldrin, let's start with you. What's one call to action that you would want to put to everyone on this call?
That's a great question. The first thing I would want to talk about is actually the mindset behind it. Something that I've been telling the team throughout the last probably 3-4 months, depending in this pandemic, is while the industry is trying to figure out what to do, we've actually been thriving. So the first thing I need everyone to know, and on our team or everyone here who's listening, is the enemy can't win. We're talking about whoever it might be out there. We're talking about the big banks out there. We're in the financial industry. Those big banks, they train their advisors to make profits for the bank. When we talk about those financial boutiques out there, those guys can't win either because they cater to the high net worth. When you look at a pie, there's more middle income than there are high net worth. But we as a business model can actually cater to both. And the very last one there is all those copycat candy companies that try to do what we do. World Financial Group is often imitated, never duplicated, but they only try to mimic what it is that we do. So my call to action for all of you here is this: whatever it is that you choose to do, you got to work. I love the word that Mike brought up earlier, which is the word is conditioning. Here's the thing: there's a big difference between change and conditioning. 21 days is not enough to make an evolution. Change does not equal evolution. So for us, it took decades for us to be conditioned to us to actually develop these poor habits. So do you think 21 days is enough time for us to actually get out of those habits? The answer is no. So the first thing we need to do, my call to action for all of you here, is develop this mindset that you need to be resourceful. Resourceful isn't about lack of resources, but your lack of resourcefulness. So I want to challenge all of you here to just think more resourceful. And what ends up happening is you end up creating these opportunities for your specific needs.
Wow, very, very powerful. Thank you very much, Aldrin. Jamie, what would your final call to action be to everyone who's on this call?
You said earlier, you were built for this. In this company, in WFG, we've been trained for this, the mental toughness to focus on our whys. And that, all the champions are going through tough times right now. None of us are immune to any of these things. We all have the COVID stuff going on, and then the other stuff that's in the media. And then, on top of that, I know that my husband's mom is in the hospital going through chemo treatments. So there's tough times everywhere. But right now, what I would challenge you guys to do is like Mike said, to perform like an Olympian, to train like an Olympian, and think of what's the finish line. Your family's not financial independence yet. You're not there. They're not. The goal's not done yet. You're not at the finish line yet. Maybe you haven't been able to retire your parents. Maybe you haven't been able to get your kids college funded. It's still there. And so a lot of people are focused on that big hurdle, and that's all they're looking at. And then of course their friends are negative, and the social media is negative, and the news is negative, and better than that. The champions all went through tough stuff, but they did it anyway. So every day, you know, momentum is created by movement, by action. So every day, stay focused on that end zone or that finish line. Instead of focusing on the problem or the hurdle, focus on, okay, I can see the finish line. I'm not there yet. How am I going to get around it or under it, over it? Who can help me be pulled over it? And constantly be reaching out to your mentors, your trainers, other people that are positive, that have the like mind, that care about you, that care about your family. If you're feeling down, like he said, act your role. Yeah, you know what? There is times that I was like, oh my gosh, now what, right? But I got on the Zoom and act that role, be enthusiastic, be excited, just constantly be thinking about what's next. And this will pass. It will all pass. But at the end of it, are you going to be better because of it? And you know what? People are going to remember during this time who was there for them, who reached out to them, who was an inspiration during them, and who led them during this time. And I'll tell you what, I saw it happen in 9/11. I saw it happen in 2008 financial crisis. Whoever is focused right now, whoever can keep themselves, sheltered, a mind sealed tightly against all negative, and just every day grow you, every day grow your business, every day have yourself just, immersed in positive, good people, good messages. And on the other side of this, 6 months, 18 months from now, the people that stay focused right now are going to be the biggest people in this company.
Wow. Dan, your final call to action to the folks on this call.
I think for me, for everyone, you guys, first of all, the panel did an awesome job. Aldrin, I was listening to you speak, man. You got me fired up, man. I just wrote that down. I'm going to use that. But I think if I had to tell everybody one thing, it would be it's go time. And what I mean by go time is you're either going to be a momentum maker or momentum taker. And if you change the way you look at something, what you look at actually changes. I'll tell you a quick story. So not too long ago, I was coming from my private club in Beverly Hills, right? And it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm shooting down Sunset Boulevard. I'm fired up, got my windows down, got my suit on with my tie and music, and I'm just vibing. I'm going home. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I get pulled over by a police officer. Boom, lights pulled up, right? So I hit all my windows goes down. I turn down my music, and he comes out of the car with a flashlight. And he asks me for my driver's license and all of that stuff. And I said, good evening, sir. How you doing? All the stuff. And then he looks at me. He goes, do you know why I pulled you over? And I looked at him and I said, well, I know exactly why you pulled me over. He goes, really? You know exactly why I pulled you over? I said, yeah. He says, well, tell me why you pulled me over. And I said to him, I says, well, I got a beautiful car. I'm well dressed. I look like a nice guy. So you probably ask yourself, I wonder if that guy would give me a ride in his car. And then he started laughing. Right? And then he said, he didn't even go back to his car. He said, so you are having a nice day. I said, I am having a nice day. And he said, he gave me back my ID. He said, well, have a great day. And I said, have a great day too. My point is, we are momentum makers. Now, I'm not making any light of anything that's going on. I'm just telling you, I can only control what I can control. And I can control my attitude. I can control my activity. I can control my alignment. And I definitely can control my alignment with my leaders. So all the great things that the leaders have said today, I think we've got a lot of great information, a lot of great contact. But right now, it's go time. Become a momentum maker, not a momentum taker. Thank you.
Wow. Become a momentum maker, not a momentum taker. That's great. And by the way, Dan, what car do you drive?
A Rolls Royce.
Oh my God. So the next time I'm in your neck of the woods, when I'm allowed to fly, I look forward to the ride, man. Great. Thank you, Dan. So Steve, share with us your one call to action to everyone on this call.
Well, I appreciate this call. It's been unbelievable for me. And what do you say after those three great speakers? But I'll say this. Everybody on this call, you need to understand that you're getting your standard. Right now in your life, you're getting exactly what you expect. You're getting paid what you expect. This is hard or easy as you expect it to be. This business, much like this life, is becoming exactly what you think it's going to be. Think about that. So here's my challenge. Maybe it's time to raise the standard. Maybe it's time to raise the expectation. Maybe it's time for us to go and get the seat at the table for once and for all. And none of this start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. For once and for all, we raise the standard. And I'll tell you this, once the standard is raised, and if that is truly your standard, you will never go back to the way things used to be. And then you just got to keep raising the standard and raising the standard and raising the standard. And one day you wake up and you live a life on purpose, with purpose. And that's the game changer. Thanks for the opportunity, Mike.
Listen, Steve, what a great close. I want to thank all the panelists. This truly has been a remarkable conversation. And I know that we've still got a couple minutes. So I think Rick or anyone else, is there, or are there any questions or any comments that we can respond to from the audience? Rick, have we still got a few minutes, or are we on time?
Absolutely,
Hey, Mike.
we've got some time. I'm going to pass it over to Mark, and Mark's going to go through a couple of questions.
Great. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Mike. And I'm sure everybody is appreciating everything that they've been hearing. I think there's a lot of great information that's been shared here today. And, I just want to say that, we have everybody across North America tuning in to this from our WFG family. And, we're all going through these very interesting times, but we're doing it together. We're going to get through it together. And I'm sure everybody's getting that sense off of this call today. So we have a couple questions. Of course, we did commit to answering some of our questions live that people have been putting into the Q&A button. One of the first questions that we'll ask, and Mike, I'll ask it to you, maybe you can tap into all the panelists here to get a response on this. Of course, it's appropriate for the medium that we're using right now for this call and this webinar, which is Zoom. So what are the suggestions or the best practices for either sitting or standing when you're conducting calls on Zoom or any other video conferencing platform for that matter?
Wow. So Mark, great question, or whoever asked the question, great question. So as you can tell, I'm standing. So I like to stand if I'm doing a marquee presentation like this. If it was just you and me and we were in, you were in your kitchen and it was late at night, then I'd be sitting and I wouldn't be as amped up or as stoked as I am now. So I like to stand. I like to move. I like to simulate the way I would be if I was on stage in front of a group of people. That's number one. Number two, and Jamie and I had this conversation 2 days ago, you want to make sure that when you're on camera, people can see from your torso up, because that means they can see more of you as a person. Think about real life. We don't just see people's head. We see their torso, right? We see the table and we see them above the table. So the more of you you can show, the more you can express yourself, the more powerful and the more impactful you're going to be on camera. The third thing, as I said, and I want to highlight this again, you want to light yourself up and you want to keep things simple. So even if you had a look at my slides, I like to make them colorful, like to make them single-minded so that the slides become a prompt for my speech, not the other way around. So those are my thoughts. I'm just curious to any of the panelists, would you have any guidance in terms of your secret sauce when it comes to virtual communication?
No, I just for me, just to add the transfer of energy part, I think is important. Mike, I know you talked about that before, but when you're sitting face to face, obviously it takes let's say a 7 out of 10, right? When you're talking on a device, you need to give it an 8 or 9 out of 10. So that's just my best advice is if you're sitting in front of me right now, it's going to feel like I'm screaming at your face. But because you're on Zoom, Zoom is absorbing the energy. People that talk like they're face-to-face with somebody on Zoom seem very monotone.
Very good. Very good. And Steve, let me ask you, because I can't resist this. You seem to have a very fancy microphone in front of you.
Yeah, I overcompensate for my base shop recruiting numbers lately, but I do some recording and stuff. So I just $249 on sale. It's a Blue Yeti mic. It just the directional mic.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, Mark, give us another question.
Perfect. Our next question is more specific to our business model in WFG, and in terms of everything going virtual and the conversion transition everybody's had to do because of COVID, how has that impacted the prospecting, the recruiting process because of all the sheltering in place across North America?
Great. So who would
Oh
like
my gosh, I think it's made a huge impact. It's, you know, I have guys, SMDs, that were only in California at the beginning of COVID, and now they're in 27 different states. So because before we had to invite them down to a BPM, do first, second, third appointments and drive 2 hours sometimes to get to an appointment. Now we can do appointments every 30 minutes, anywhere. We could be anywhere in the country, all day long. And people that maybe were in tiny towns that we couldn't even map to because there was no office anywhere local are already licensed and, in training and seeing appointments every day now. So I think it hasn't impacted us in a negative way at all. It's only helped us.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, Mark, give us another question.
I got a question here about, again, doing calls on Zoom or video conferencing. And when you have content that you're trying to reference while you're being charismatic with the audience, how do you make it seem as if you're not reading and trying to keep eye contact with your audience in the camera?
Well, Aldrin, let me ask you that question because you seem to be the most tech savvy of us. So Aldrin, how do you communicate while you are reading, but you don't want to be reading?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the fundamental basic of working on your craft. I think the more prepared you are, the better way you're going to be able to execute. I think that the better you get in your business and just really your overall profession, you end up taking practice for granted. Especially in this day and age, like us as who are the most experienced, got to go back to practicing. Little adjustments that you can make, which is like like asking like when you're sharing your screen, stop sharing your screen so they can see you visually, literally getting closer to your camera and moving back. As long as it's not, you're not creating this visual hypnosis and vocal hypnosis, it'll allow you to actually keep the attention span of whoever you're speaking to much better.
That's so good. And look, I would just add that you've got to know your material so well that sometimes, yes, you've got to look at your screen, but other times it's got to be in your DNA. There's no substitute for that degree of preparation where you can look at the screen and then look directly at the camera. So I can only give you this talk now because I've internalized it. It's as much a part of me as my DNA. So there's no shortcut to greatness. That's what I would say. Mark, give us the next question.
I have a question that's actually a perfect caveat to that previous question. So going from the question to looking at the camera and how do you look at the camera to what are the best tips for the type of camera you use, how you place your camera and the lighting around that camera.
Okay, so look, I'll take that question directly. So I would encourage all of you to upgrade to a high quality webcam. They're pretty inexpensive. I'm currently using what's known as a Logitech 922 webcam. So if you just go onto Amazon, Logitech 922 webcam, I think that's what it's called. It's a high definition 1080 pixels. And then, so that's number one, make sure you've got a great quality webcam. If the lighting is sharp around you, it's going to pick up more of you. And then what you've got to do is get into the habit of looking directly at the webcam when you talk, not at the face of the other person on the screen. Because if I looked at you on the screen, you'll see that my eyes now are not at the camera. I'm looking at the faces on the screen, but now it doesn't look like I'm looking directly at you, whereas now I'm looking directly at you. So I think it's practice, and I think it's experimentation, and it's getting feedback from the people around you. And look, if you're still in doubt, go onto YouTube and just type in, how should you talk to a webcam in order to be the most impactful you can on camera? And you'll get a whole lot of tutorials. And then I think, as Dan mentioned so well, you just got to find your own recipe. You got to find your own way there, but there's no shortcut to this. Mark, next question.
We got two more questions. We're getting close to the end of our program, and we'll pass it off to Rick after these last two questions to close off for some closing comments. But these last two are two roundtable questions. So the first one is about books, favorite books that were impactful in your life or in your business life. I know, Mike, that you're an author yourself, but maybe we can do a roundtable ask on what are the most memorable or impactful books that everybody has in their lives.
Yeah, so it's interesting. There's a great book on selling called The Challenger Sale. Some of you might be familiar with it, and there's an accompanying book called The Challenger Customer. And it's about three things: how do you teach, how do you tailor your message, and then how do you take control. So those two books had a major impact on me and really have influenced the way I sell and the way I build relationships. But Dan, what are the books, or what is the book that has influenced your thinking?
Probably for me, from a business standpoint, from WFG standpoint, number one book for me would be The Business Format System. I remember when I first got started in the business, one of my mentors said, if you want to keep a secret, put it in a book, because no one ever reads the book. So the Business Format System, which covers our 6 steps and 8 speed filters, from a business standpoint, I think that's the most impactful book. Personally, from a personal standpoint, obviously we're in the people business. So How to Win Friends and Influence People is a classic book. Think and Grow Rich is a classic book. The Magic of Thinking Big is a classic book. And I think creating the habit where you're constantly reading, and we're now in the information age. So, I tell my leaders, never ask a question that could be answered by Google. So if you have a question, then do a little bit of research on it, because we have so much access to so much information, and then you can approach it where you want to understand something. So making reading a part of what you do is something that's really, really powerful.
Perfect. So just quickly, Jamie, if you can share with us your favorite book.
I think the same ones as Dan, pretty much, but I think Magic of Thinking Big is one that I'll read over and over. And then just in personal life as a mom, 3 Steps to a Strong Family is one of my favorite books too. Perfect.
Thank you. Aldrin.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what stage you are in life in terms of what book you'll find most impactful. I heard a message before that the 2 things that can make great change in your lives are the people you meet or a book you read. But there's one particular book that I think is not read enough. I don't even think many of us actually know it exists, but it's something you can reference over and over again, us being in business, and that is The Magic of Compound Recruiting. Like that's something that'll serve you in every single day. So find a way to actually get your hands on that, and I promise you it will serve you greatly.
Well done. Thank you. Steve.
Yeah, I mean, all those books, obviously. I'm going to go with a different one just to be different. But probably the first book that I read here, it was by John Maxwell, Developing the Leader Within You. It's really where I started. It planted the seed of belief that I could be a leader too, and that I had the control, that I could control my own destiny. And it's really, really where it started to get the gears churning. And for me, that's where it all started.
Perfect. Excellent. So Mark, give us your final question.
Our final roundtable question for today is, in midst of what we're all dealing with COVID around and the transition of our business to something different than what it was prior to COVID, what is, let's do this as a roundtable, I guess, and what is everyone's one biggest, most challenging aspect to transitioning to the new way of doing business?
Well, let's start with you, Steve. What's your biggest challenge when you transition to the new business?
What? I'm going to go with something maybe a little different than what everybody else is going to answer. What's been the biggest hurdle for me is thinking big enough. I've caught myself over the last few weeks. I caught myself going, holy crap. I'm thinking way too small. So my biggest challenge in the midst of this crisis, I'll tell you that we're having record months as a team. I feel like I'm on fire, but I caught myself not thinking big enough. That's been my biggest challenge.
Perfect. Aldrin.
I was hoping you'd ask me last, but okay. What's been my biggest challenge when it comes to this pandemic at this time? I think I was probably going to answer it the same way Steve was, but I'll make it a little bit more lower level and just talk a little bit about on the business side of things. I think the biggest pivot point we got to do is probably retraining our field force again. Retraining them and really making sure that they're equipped to what we do. I remember the first time I tried to do Zoom do my first presentation on Zoom, it was just terrible. But I said, man, I don't know if we would be able to do this. So I thought to myself, you know what, not only do I got to re-equip myself and re-equip our field force. So it doesn't matter if you've been in business for 10 years, since day one or for one day, you got to make sure you're re-equipped. And I promise you that when it comes to working on your craft, there's no glory when it comes to practice, but there's no glory without it either, right? So that would be my
so good. So good. Jamie.
Well, pivoting, it wasn't that hard. I mean, I've worked harder the last 3 months than I have in, who knows how long. And we had to, relearn all of these ways of doing presentations and get information out. All that's pretty easy. I think what was the hardest, and I think it's always the hardest thing in this business, is people. So as a leader, yes, you're training and you're, inspiring and you're doing all these things, but you're also absorbing all of the negative because your people come to you with, I don't know who to call. I just can't deal with what I'm seeing on the news. Is the world coming to an end? And so all of that bubbles up too. All of the good news does, all of the promotions and the excitement and all the families helped and all the, all these great things, but also all of the hardships are bubbling up, and more than ever, they all come up. So we have to also remember that we have to, all that negativity, we have to detox ourselves from. So we need to make sure we're getting enough rest, that we are reading the right books, that we are, meditating your prayer or whatever you need to do, and reading your goals and getting yourself excited. Like the saying of who motivates the motivator. Just make sure that you feel like you're strong, and then you see the stuff, on the TV that's just so depressing, and then you don't want to get out of bed for 2 days. And so that's, I think, the hardest part, but it's also my favorite part about this business, kind of what you said, Mike, the breakthroughs that you're giving people right now. People are the hardest because you want it so bad for them, and you're trying to kind of drag them through this time and inspire them. But at the same time, it's so rewarding because, once they get through the other side of this, the breakthroughs that they're going to have and the good that they're going to have come to them in their life.
Beautiful. So, Dan, the final word is yours. What's the biggest challenge that you've come through in terms of COVID?
I think the biggest challenge for us, Mike, is that, everyone said, we're in the people business, and we are in the seminar business. And usually when we walk into a room with 50, 60, 70, 80, 100, 200 people, we're able to feel the energy of the room and shift energy. On Zoom, you might have a great presentation. You might have 300, 400 people on Zoom, but you can't really see them. You can't really see, are they actively listening, or if they're just muted and laying on a couch and passively listening to you. So as a leader, is figure out a creative way where you can be giving your information and giving your knowledge and driving the business. You can make sure that people are listening. So one of the things that we've done, Mike, is that when we do a Zoom, I also have my staff that's scrolling through and identifying that, making sure that people have their cameras on, they're actively listening, and we set up an accountability system that tracks that. And one of the things that we saw early on is that we would end the Zoom call. And then one of my leaders said, Charlie, I ended my Zoom call, but I still had 20 people that they were still dialed in, which means that they were never listening in the first place. So you have to be able to understand the navigation and how to navigate through that right now and pay attention to those details.
Yeah. So look, just exquisite insight and information from everyone. I just want to conclude by saying that for me, this has been like my Super Bowl final. It's been a pleasure. It's been a privilege. It's been a joy. And I want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes, which goes like this: don't walk behind me because I may not lead. Don't walk in front of me because I may not follow. Walk beside me and let's go create this future together. So thank you for the privilege, and back to you, Rick.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Let me say a couple words and then I'll pass it to Rick to close off. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you so much to all of our panelists, Jamie, Steve, Aldrin, and Dan, of course. I mean, everything that you've shared today is definitely lending to getting us all to lead the recovery here and to lead the charge to recovery, and to really lend to polishing everybody's process in efforts to do that. So thank you so much for all of that. The most common question that we actually had was, is this recorded and where can I get the recording? I can't write fast enough of all the stuff that I'm hearing, and I'll just make a comment on that. Yes, the good news is this is being recorded. It will be posted. The information of where you'll be able to access it is, you guessed it, will be on the play card. So make sure you watch your emails, read the play card every week. Keep logging into mywfg.com to stay in the know, to get through these times. And with all of that, Thank you, everyone. I will pass it back to Rick for closing comments.
Thanks very much, Mark. And look, I want to thank you so much to the panelists. You guys did a fantastic job. We were so blessed to have you on. I was reading the chats, and the constant theme I heard was wow, wow, wow. And I got to tell you, this was a wow event for us. And you guys did a fantastic job. So thank you so much to all of you, Jamie, Aldrin, Steve, and Dan. Mike, what can I say? Again, just full of great energy, full of nuggets for our business. Again, we're so blessed to have you with us and spending time with us. I know you're a very busy person. You've got, I think you do over 200 of these a year or more all over the world. And for us to have you for 90 minutes was just incredible. Again, I know this is going to impact our business. I know this is going to take us to the next level. So I want to say thank you so much for that. And thank you for being part of this great session. I also want to say, please reach out to Mike's website, Mike Lipkin's website. There's great information there. His books are there. His videos are there. I go to on a regular basis. It lifts me up as a person. So thank you for that. And look, my final thing I wanted to mention, is that this could not happen without the support of our platinum product providers. As you know, this was a North American event, and I wanted to recognize the platinum providers that supported this. In the US, it was Transamerica Life. I want to say thank you to Victor and his team and all the Transamerica folks for helping to help pay for this, because it was not a cheap event, but it was a great event. In Canada, we had Industrial Alliance, we had Equitable Life, we had Avari, we had Canada Protection Plan, and then finally Bank in Montreal, all contributed to this successful event. So please say thank you to them, because that shows us how much they believe in our business, how much they believe in our organization, and how much they believe in you. So I wanted to recognize those folks in the platinum providers. So in closing, again, thank you all for being on this call. Let's move this organization to the next level. I believe this is another boost to taking us through a very challenging time. And again, to the panelists and to Mike, thank you so much for everything you did today. Appreciate you.
And Rick, I wanted to say, on behalf of all of our panelists, but also the entire field, thank you to WFG, and thank you to you, and thank you to Home Office for even having the insight to put this all together and care so much about us in the field and all that you do for us every day, and how strong you guys have been through all of this. So, and thank you, Mike, you were phenomenal.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to all our viewers. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. Take care, stay safe. We'll see you next time.